Hi everyone, it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you a product from the Stamps of Life that is the Large Circle Flip It die set. And it is a die set that makes a Flip It card, and this is the main piece. So you have your large die that makes your card base, and then you have your layering pieces which you can layer on the sides of your card. And it comes with these fun goodies. It has these flowers. There's a large, medium, and a small flower. There's also some circle dies in here. So you get some layering circle dies as well as the shadow dies that go with each one of the flowers. So each flower has its own shadow and has its own circle die, and then the large circle has even a larger circle die. And then there's a couple swirls, and then there's the centers of the flowers. So you get a large one, and then you get a small one for the smaller flowers. So that is the Large Circle Flip It. Now there's also these other products that are for sale at the Stamps of Life, and that is the circle word dies. And there are 4 word dies, and then there are some stitched circle frames that you can make, and I'm going to show you these in just a minute. But let's start with the circle word die. So you have Just Pray, you also have I'm So Sorry, Thank You My Friend, and Thinking of You. And they are so pretty. These actually will fit in that large circle of your Flip It card base if you wanted to use those. And how these work is they have come with 2 dies, so each circle comes with 2 dies. You have your large circle that goes in the back of the sentiment. So here for this, I die cut this large circle out of a white piece of cardstock, and then I took both of these dies together and put them just like this to cut the actual words out of the guava cardstock. And I also made sure I had double-sided adhesive on the back of the guava cardstock because you can see how intricate these are. And when that comes out of the die cut machine, you actually get 2 pieces, and then you would just layer on the words on top of the circle. And I'm going to show you how to do this as I make my card today, so you'll get to see that up close. Now this set of dies is a little bit unique because they are circles, but they do something a little bit different than just cut out some circles. So I want to show you that here, but I want you to notice that there's a larger piece. This is just a solid circle die, and then the next layer has stitching all around, and then the next layer is a solid, and then the next layer is stitching, and it keeps on going in that order until you get down to the very small middle piece. Now what that does is this large circle, it will actually cut out a circle, and then this one that has the stitching, I want you to notice how it cuts. So it actually cut the circle out, but it also put stitching around this piece of cardstock. So I don't know if you can see that. You actually have a stitched frame going all around, but it also cut that circle out. So you can do something nice with border stitch, having a stitched border or a stitched frame on your card. You can also layer these up just like this. So you have your solid on the outside and your stitching in the middle, and you can cut out a border such as this. This is actually a border with the stitching going all around. So you can also use these to make shaker cards. So remember, when you need to make shaker cards, you actually need a larger die and then an inside die to layer to cut out a border or a frame, and you can make shaker cards with these. So I just wanted to show you the uniqueness about these because these aren't just regular circle dies. They actually cut out that stitching, and it's really pretty because you can actually put that on a card front and have the stitching all around. You can even take this die with the stitching, and you can, if you wanted to, layer it right around that word and just make it a stitch circle around there instead of the solid. So just by adding a border around there with the stitching, and that would be pretty too. So let's go ahead and make a card today. So starting out, I took the largest die in that die set. This is your card base. I die cut it out of guava cardstock, and you can see it puts the score lines in here, so you just have to fold up the score lines to create the flip it card. But I'm going to set that aside for right now, and I want to take a look at these layering pieces. So I have some pattern paper that I'm going to be using to die cut these layering pieces. And when you are die cutting, so this large one is going to be the back side or the right side of your flip it card. It's important to note that when you're die cutting to take a look at this large die, and it says TSOL here at the top. That is the top part of your die. So if you have a paper that is directional, and I'm not using a directional paper, but I'm going to just show you just as an example with this one. So this is directional, and if I were to put this upside down, then what's going to happen is when you get it out of your die cut machine, it's going to be like this, because this die will only fit one side here, one way on your card. So this is the right way, but if I were to actually die cut it this way, then you can see that the circle part would be on the opposite side of the card. And I've done that before by mistake, so I just want to point that out to you when you're die cutting these, because you want to make sure, especially when you're using pattern paper, that you are die cutting the right way. So again, take a look at your layering pieces and see which way they go on this card front. And that's the way that you want to lay them down on your paper. So if you're using a directional paper, again, this one just shows that the words are at the top. That's the top of your die. So that's the way that you want to die cut it, okay? This particular die, you can see that there's only one way that it goes, with the circle opening here this way. So that's the way, if you were doing it directional, that's the way that you'd want to lie it down on your paper. So the paper that I'm using doesn't matter which direction it is, so it really wouldn't even matter which way I laid it down, but I just wanted to point that out, just, you know, in case you guys are using a paper like that. So I'm going to go ahead and lay these dies here on my pattern paper, and then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. So here are my 2 layering pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and just put glue on the back of these and add them to this card. See, look at that. Look how easy that is. And then you can just fold here at the score lines. And there is your card base. Look at that. I love flip it cards. They're so easy. So when you ever need to make a quick card, just pull out your flip it cards, and those will always guarantee you a quick card. So just want to point out, the small side is on the front or on the left, and then the larger side is on the right or in the back. So now we're ready to decorate this panel, and then we can decorate the rest of the card. So I'm going to use the Thinking of You. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the large circle, and that would be die cut out of just white cardstock. That would be the background piece. The Thinking of You, I'm going to die cut out of the guava, which is the same color as the card base. And I put double-sided adhesive on the back because these letters are so intricate, and to try to put glue on the back of them would be really difficult. So you want to make sure that you have your double-sided adhesive on the back of that cardstock. So what I'm going to do is I am going to run this through my die cut machine, and you actually have to layer these 2 dies. So I'm going to take out a piece of washi tape and just hold these together. And then that's going to be run through just like that. Now, because I have all of these circle dies, I am going to go ahead and grab another circle. It's the same exact size circle as this one, okay? So you actually would be taking this same circle and die cutting a piece of the background cardstock, which in this case is white. So I'm just taking another circle that goes with another one of these other circle dies, because they're all the same size. And then I'm going to run that through the die cut machine. It's just going to save me time rather than having to run this through, then take out that circle and run it through again. So when that comes out of the die cut machine, just going to remove, now let's remove the dies. Okay, and here is what I'm left with. I have this piece, which you can go ahead and weed out the large chunks that you don't need. But when you do that, just be careful that you're not tearing any of these letters, because you can see how, look how intricate that T is. So make sure you're not pulling that and tearing it when you weed this stuff out. Look how pretty that is. I love this. So you can die cut this in any color cardstock that you want. You can even die cut the background piece, that large circle, out of a piece of pattern paper and have some pretty pattern paper show behind it, because look at all the space you have around these letters. So I'm just gonna pull off that adhesive backing, and then this is the piece that you're gonna stick to your circle. And again, remember that these were cut out of the same size circle die, so it's gonna layer on perfectly. So once you have that where you want it, you can just press those letters down, and look at how pretty that is. So that sentiment would go right there. Look how perfect that fits. It fits perfectly in the middle. So if you wanted to, you can make it say, "I'm so sorry." It could say, "Just pray." And it could say, "Thank you, my friend." But those fit perfectly. Now, if you don't have the extra circle dies, that's okay, because you can still use the dies that are in here. So you still have some circle dies in this actual Flip It die set that you can layer on, and then you can put like the flowers in the middle. And I've already die cut some of the flowers, but you can decorate this whole front with some flowers. Or you can cut out some of your circle dies as a background, and you can use any of your stamps and dies to put in the middle. This circle is so large that it'll pretty much fit a lot of different stamps that you might have in your collection. Let me just take out a ruler and just measure how large this is. So it's about a 3-inch circle. So that's a good space to put some stamps or dies right in the middle there. So you don't have to use the flowers. You don't have to use the sentiments. You can just get the card base and just pop any old stamps in there that you have. But I'm gonna go ahead and use the Thinking of You. So I'm going to just put some glue on the back of this and then add that right to the center. So I've already die cut some flowers. I have 3 flowers out of the guava. So I have my large flower die. I have 1 guava piece here. Then I have my medium flower die, and I die cut a piece of lemonade cardstock and 2 pieces of the guava. And then I have the small flower die, which I die cut 2 more pieces of the lemonade. I also have these dies. There's 2 of these dies in the set, and I die cut 4 of these little swirls out of the kiwi cardstock. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just ink up the edges. So I'm gonna use my guava ink from the Stamps of Life. I'm gonna ink up the edges of the guava cardstock, and then I'm gonna use my lemonade ink and ink up the edges of the lemonade cardstock. And that just adds some nice dimension on your flowers. Next, I'm gonna layer these flowers up. So I'm gonna take my large guava flower, and I'm gonna layer up the medium size underneath on top of that. Now, these petals are unique because they actually can stand up. I'm not gonna lay it flat. So you technically could glue the whole thing down and just make it a flat flower, but instead I'm just gonna put glue at the center of the bottom, and I'm gonna lay it right on top of the large flower, and I'm gonna make sure that my petals are going to be in the middle of the 2 larger petals. So you can see that the smaller petals are in the middle where each one of the larger petals are, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna press that down, and what's unique about this is then you can just lift these petals up and you can have some nice dimension on your card, and I think that's really pretty. So that's what I'm gonna do when I adhere them, just kind of raise them. So next I'm going to take my small yellow flower, same thing, glue in the middle, and then I'm just going to put it in the middle there of the medium size guava flower, and making sure that the petals are kind of in the middle so they're not right on top. just add some more interest. And do the same thing with the last one. Okay, so now we're ready to put these on our card. Now with this, I do suggest putting double-sided adhesive on the back of your cardstock. This die is so thin, I did not do that, so I'm gonna have to glue these down. So I just here need to decide where I wanna put my flowers. And I'm thinking that I'm gonna put them here, maybe one up here and then two down below. And I'll probably put some of these swirls just underneath, just to add some more interest. Like that would be pretty, I think. So let me go ahead and just start with this top one. I'm gonna go ahead and add this. Now, when you're adding these, just make sure that you're not gluing the whole thing down, only glue the middle. So I think what I'm gonna do is add these first, because otherwise I'm gonna have a hard time tucking them under. So I'm just gonna add some glue. I'm gonna rub that glue in just to make sure it doesn't leak out in globs. And then add my swirl. I'm gonna do another one here. So hopefully you've put double-sided adhesive on the back of yours, so you don't have to worry about this. And I just wanna make sure that this will look centered, so that looks pretty good. So I'll add those, press those down, and then I can add my flowers. So we'll add that right there in the corner. Just press that down. And then these can come up. Isn't that pretty? Oh, I love that. So it's just extra dimension to your card. That's gorgeous. Look at that, see? Isn't that pretty? Oh, I love that. All right, so let's do the ones here on the bottom. So I'm gonna open this up, and I gotta figure out where I wanna put these swirls. So I'm gonna go ahead and add glue to the bottom center. Press those down. Now in your die set, you have these circles that you can die cut. There's a small one and a large one. And you can die cut cardstock to make centers for those circles. But I think I'm gonna put some epoxy dots in there just to add a little bit of bling. So I'm going to add these really pretty epoxy dots to the center, and I'm doing them in blue because I think that blue will bring out some of the blue in the pattern paper. Look how gorgeous. Wow, isn't that pretty? Oh my goodness, that is so pretty. So for the inside, you can either leave this like it is and write your message, but I just die cut a circle die from the Flip It die set, and I just die cut it out of the white cardstock, and I'm just gonna add that there. And then you can write a message, or if you wanted to stamp something and write a message, you could have stamped before you applied the circle. And that is my card. I think that turned out really, really pretty. So you can see the dimension that that gives. You can see those pretty flowers, how gorgeous they are. And when you open it up, you can write your message. And this is such an easy, quick card base. So that is the Circle Flip It from the Stamps of Life. So I want to go ahead and make a card using these circle dies with the stitching. And I have taken a piece of white cardstock, cut it down to 5 1/4 by 4, and then I laid my stitch circles on here. And now these are the actual ones with the stitching, all 3 of these. So I have the larger one, then the next size, and then the next size. And then I just laid them on my white cardstock, and I'm gonna run this through my die cut machine. So when that comes out of the die cut machine, I'm carefully going to remove these dies, and I want you to notice that this actually cuts out the circle and also puts the stitching on the cardstock. So some of you might have in your collection the stitched only circle dies. those are different because those put the stitching in the cardstock but do not cut out the circle, whereas these will actually cut the circle out. So those are a little bit different. I don't want you to confuse the two. So you can see how pretty all of that stitching is around those circles. Next, I took a piece of pattern paper and I cut that down to the same exact size as my white cardstock. So it's 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And these pieces will just layer on just like that. So I'm gonna grab my glue. I'm gonna flip this over. I'm gonna put glue on the back, but what I'm not gonna do is put glue all the way at the very edge of this circle, because I'm gonna have some of the seaweed sticking in to the circle on some of these. So I wanna make sure that I have some room there so that the seaweed will fit. So I'm just gonna layer that on. They're the same size, so they will fit perfectly. Now, if you do have any extra hanging off, maybe you trimmed it a little bit different or didn't get a even enough cut, you can always just use your scissors or paper trimmer and just trim off any excess. So it looks like I got a little bit of an edge there. I'm just gonna go ahead and take my paper trimmer to that so I can get a straight edge, and I will be right back after I do that. So I'm gonna be using some of the fish from the Fish Tank to Stamp set. This is actually some die cuts from the Loving Life paper pad from the January card kit from the Stamps of Life. So if you happen to have that paper pad, or even if you have the stamp set, this is really cute because these little fish and the turtles here, they actually make for a, I guess I should say they're sized perfectly for this kind of card. So what I'm doing is I don't want so much of this white showing, because I want to kind of have so that these, for example, the starfish is tucked behind the seaweed. And I think with all the white showing, it kind of just takes away from the effect of what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to trim down some of these, probably all of them, just to kind of maintain a consistent feel throughout the card. And then I'm going to add them to the circles. But I think this is such a cute little scene. So you can see the seaweed. The seaweed was cut out of the dies from the Fish Tank to Stamp dies. And I'm just gonna be adding some of the seaweed in here and then some of the fish. And I should have put double-sided adhesive on the back of this cardstock, and I did not do that. So I'm just gonna have to put some glue and just wipe it down with my finger just so that it doesn't clump up. And that will be fine. But I'm just gonna tuck some of this seaweed in here. I'll do it for all of them and just glue everything down. And I also die cut some of the rocks from the Fish Tank dies, and I'm just gonna put some of the rocks in there. So I just die cut them out of the cloud cardstock. So I stamped out You're a Great Catch with the poppy ink, and I'm going to layer this on a piece of poppy cardstock. And that poppy cardstock measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I think it looks pretty with a little bit of that poppy showing through. And it matches the ink and it matches the fish. And then we'll layer that on to a card base. It's just a white card base that's cut to an A2 in size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm just gonna add some epoxy dots. And that completes my card. So you can see that pretty stitching around those circles. Just love how that card turned out. I think it's so super cute.